All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the beginning of Unit 3. Can you believe we are more than halfway done with the semester? You've got your persuasive speech, which is this speech that we're going to be learning about right now. And then you've got the best speech of all, the ceremonial speech. All right, so before we dive into Unit 3, take a look really quickly at the Hit Your Targets page in your syllabus and your course pack. You'll see that this speech is almost identical to your informative speech. However, although the expectations are very similar, there is a different format that we're using. And I want you to really think differently than the usual persuasive speeches that you're used to hearing in your previous public speaking classes, all right? So let's start with question 1, talking about the slight difference between informative speaking and persuasive speaking. Now, one of the things that I hope that you took away from the informative speaking class, or excuse me, the informative speech, there we go, is that you're feeling some kind of knowledge gap, right? Oh, you didn't know that. Well, let me tell you about this, right? They didn't have any knowledge of this, and obviously they were favorable to it. But with persuasive speaking, there's actually something that's a lot different and really important that I want you to think about. You're highlighting a need gap that the audience has, and then you're asking them to do something about it via some kind of call to action, okay? So I'm going to show you what this kind of looks like in just a minute with this funny Honda Fit commercial. But again, think about this idea of a need gap, okay? So your audience has some kind of need or problem. I'll use those words synonymously, need or problem, that you need to solve. And so let's take a look at this funny commercial from the Honda Fit to kind of showcase what this really looks like in terms of persuasive speaking.
Is a new Fit a great fit for you?
Do you think my bike would fit in it?
Definitely.
Also, could you come pick me up?
Ooh.
Can it see into the future?
No, but it can help you see stuff that's behind you.
Can it fit the Stanley Cup?
Yeah.
Can it get me to the hospital?
Yes.
Do I have something on my face?
Yep.
Can we take it off-roading, bro? Yeah, bro.
Oh, did you mean like this?
The new Fit is a great fit for you. Start something special with Honda.
All right, so the reason why I chose this commercial is because Honda Fit shows this persuasive strategy very specifically, right? Instead of saying, hey, you need a Honda Fit and here's why, they say, instead they say, oh, you have this problem? The Honda Fit can solve this. Oh, you have this problem? Sure, the Honda Fit can solve this. Or in other words, the Honda Fit is a good fit for you. And so when you think about your persuasive speech, that's kind of what you're doing, is you're trying to satisfy the need or solve the problems that your audience has. And so you want to think about this in terms of 3 very specific characteristics, or three very important elements that's really going to dictate how you come up with a speech topic. And if you really pay close attention and you listen to what I'm saying, I think this will make perfect sense. All right, let's look at another funny commercial that really showcases these 3 elements of a persuasive speech in a lot more clarity and hopefully more humor. All right, so hopefully you laughed. Quite comical. Love this commercial. Been looking forward to showing this to you all year. All right, the first element is you want to start by targeting a very specific demographic, okay, or a very specific audience. Now, remember, I'm asking you to think about this in terms of creating your topic. So really think about this. Start with the audience. What is the specific audience that you're targeting? Well, obviously in this commercial, we're looking at males. We can guess the age range is somewhere in 20s. Let's say they're recently graduated and very good looking, apparently, right? So you got to start with a very specific audience. Again, don't forget about what we learned in Prep 8. All right, the second thing is you have to focus on 2 problems, and then we're going to disguise them as 1 or 2 of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In this case, the hierarchy of need that was disguised was safety or security, right? This whole idea of, hey, you want to be independent. You don't want to have these metaphorical chains holding you down, or this baby crying in the grocery store, right? So that leads us to the call to action. So you need to give us something very specific to do so that we can fix this and begin satisfying our need, which is pretty obvious, right? And it makes sense. Now, keep in mind that I'm talking about the call to action here, and this is very short term. Your solutions, which we'll talk about in just a minute, are going to be a lot more long term. But essentially, you can see you have to start with this very specific audience, okay? And you have to think about what their problems are. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the solutions. And then at the very end, we'll talk about call to actions. But don't worry, this will all be clear, hopefully, over the next few preps. All right, so as I told you in the very beginning, we're going to be using Monroe's motivated sequence as opposed to kind of the topical organizational format, okay? So this really kind of narrows it down for you, and I think it will hopefully make it easier for you to accomplish this speech, and I think you'll like this better because it's very logical, it's very simple, and it really follows a format that doesn't call for like lots of transitions and lots of formalities. All right, so the first thing that you want to do in Monroe's motivating sequence is get the audience attention. So go back to prep 11 for this. If you have any questions about the attention, remember, this is really key. If you don't get the audience's attention in the very beginning, then they're going to tune out before we can even get into the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about. So attention is pretty simple, right? Get the audience attention. All right, the next thing is the needs or the problems, okay? And so this is really your first main point. And now I use the word again, needs and problems synonymously just because to me it's the same thing. But your audience is going to have two very specific problems that are disguised as one or two of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay? And so if you just want to think about this as problems your audience has, that's fine. But remember, you need two. Now, what's cool about this is that even though this is main point A, you just label the subpoints. So you just tell us the two problems your audience has. You don't have to preview it with the actual main point heading. So now that we have these problems, then we go into the satisfaction. Now, the satisfaction or the solution is different than the call to action. The satisfaction is the long term. This is the how that you remember from your last speech, right? How do we satisfy these needs? And so you give us two different ways to satisfy these needs that you just talked about and how we can make this work in the long run, okay? And so obviously your solutions have to satisfy the needs and you have to tell us how to do that. So if you want to look at this as kind of a why, how, that's fine. Either way, I try to think problem and solution, so that way it just kind of takes away any of that confusion. All right, the fourth step is the visualization. Now, if you've heard the term utopia or dystopia before, you know what I'm talking about. But essentially, what's cool about the speech is after you get their attention and tell them about the problems they have and then offer ways they can solve their problem, then the visualization makes sense because you're basically saying, hey, either A, this is how awesome your life is going to be if you take my solutions, or B, this is how terrible your life is going to be if you continue your same behaviors and actions. And so what's really cool about this is that it gives the audience a chance to kind of look into the future. And this is where you really show that persuasion, right? This is when we really see you showcasing, hey, this is how cool things are going to be. You can have fun, exaggerate, and really kind of get them to see value in it. And then we get to the call to action, which are the very two short-term tasks that your audience can do immediately to get started. Now, again, the call to action and the satisfaction are two different steps. We'll talk about the differences between these in more detail, so please don't worry. But I just want you to keep in mind, this is the format. And so you're going to start with the attention. You're going to talk about two problems your audience has that are related, and they're disguised as one or two of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then you give us the solutions. Okay, so how do we overcome this? And then finally, now that you got us kind of on the hook and we're kind of like, okay, this is kind of interesting, really sell it home with that visualization where you say, hey, this is how awesome your life is going to be if you take my advice, or fine, keep doing what you're doing. This is what you have to look forward to. Nothing. And then you can kind of like insert your evil laugh there. And then, obviously after that, they're engaged and they're excited. So you say, okay, well, this is a long process. So here are two short-term things you can do to move forward. So that's Monroe's motivated sequence in a nutshell. In the next prep, we're going to look specifically at step 2, which is the needs or the problems. And then the next prep, we'll look at the solutions. And the final prep, we'll look at the visualization and call to action. So it's going to move quickly. All right, so the good news is there's no need to do the application on the next page. However, you do need to think about your topic. And this is, I think, where students really get confused. They come to me and they're like, Adam, I want to do a speech about why you should exercise, or why you should diet healthy or eat healthy. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really work for this speech. So let me give you some tips. So right here where you're watching this video, in the Unit 3 Prep Resources folder, you'll see a file, a PDF called Audience Descriptions. And if you click on that, you'll find tons of different audiences. And what I want you to do is try to find an audience where you can say, oh, they have two really related problems that I could help them solve. And then when you've done that, do some research before you commit to this topic and make sure that you can really find sources that argue and say, yes, like this is a problem for my specific audience. So remember, we're starting with that specific audience and we're saying, okay, what problems do you have? And then we'll talk about how to solve those problems again, or how to do that, how. But it's really imperative that you have a specific audience that you can target, and that there's 2 specific problems they have that are disguised as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And guess what? The next prep will discuss that. So if you don't have any questions, start to kind of formulate what problems you think they have, your audience will have, based on that audience description sheet. And then the next prep will help you formulate those problems and disguise them as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right, I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope this makes sense. I hope you're excited about this. I think you'll like this format a little bit better, and I think if you follow these instructions and really start with a good topic, I think you'll do really well. All right, let's move on. Check, please.